satellites? A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.
Welcome to Satellite Haiku. I'm Milo.
And I'm Sean.
Yeah, welcome back. It always feels like I want to say, wow, what a week, just because it feels like a busy time.
Oh man, my week was so busy. Yeah.
Like both in the home and in abroad and like in the country and in the the family. But what else? I guess the thing that I was thinking about like all morning as I was like prepping. First of all, thanks for doing the no daylight savings shift because I'm looking forward to a time when Marco Rubio and I get what we want, which is to
hopefully we can do that without being subjected to anything else from Marco Rubio.
Right. No, it's always just my joke that it's the only thing I think we agree on.
Yeah, same.
Probably the only thing. Other than maybe that like it would be kind of nice for Cuba to become a democracy, but not a colony of the United States. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think is he of Cuban descent?
Yeah. So I learned recently that I guess he wasn't born in Castro's Cuba.
Oh.
He never lived under Castro. His parents left right before Castro took power. And so his whole apparently some of his own sort of biography is that he likes to promote has been debunked a little bit.
Like he sort of is like, I'm a long-suffering Cuban exile, but really he just was born in Miami and he just grew up there or something. It's like,
exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. It's like Elizabeth Warren saying that she's Native American or something,
right.
She's one of those kind of debunked background checks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, so the daylight savings thing, I mean, for me, it's just super annoying. And there is data to say, I'm going to give a little plug for not switching. Mm-hmm. There's data to show that it costs billions of dollars in non-productivity, lost productivity.
Okay.
People missing meetings, people waking up feeling groggy, not getting started on time. And then there's also data to show
I don't accept that as an argument for daylight savings. I feel like the religion of productivity is its own problem. But anyway,
But I'm just making like points.
No, I know. You're just steel manning the kind of the arguments for it. I get it.
There's proof or data to show.
I understand that you're not endorsing these arguments. You're just you're articulating the case.
I'm articulating them, and we're forming a coalition here.
Mm-hmm.
Marco and I have zero in common, right?
Right.
But so I'm trying to grab from any coalition partner that they brought to the table to kill daylight savings. And but there's also data to show that it causes people die of heart attacks and strokes because it throws them off and they have to sort of change their routine. And imagine if you're right on the edge and you're like 89 years old.
You mean the time change throws people off?
The time change. I
see.
Throw people twice a year, like we change back and forth.
So what it sounded like you were saying with the productivity thing was that like daylight savings, having that daylight savings actually improves productivity. But what you're saying is like it actually hurts, like daylight savings hurts product. I thought you were making a case.
No.
I thought you were saying that case for daylight savings is a productivity.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and there's a lot of semantic sort of little
I didn't know which side of the argument that was on.
I'm basically saying that there is no argument at this point in history for changing our clocks twice a year relative to the rest of the planet. Like why move the clock forward or back at all? Like if that's daylight savings, then it's like that was like a farm era.
It's not unique to the United States though.
They don't do it in Colombia. I mean, there's plenty of places that don't.
There are plenty of places that don't do it, and but it's not totally unique to the United. I was just talking to somebody from Finland, and they do it there, for example.
it's an archaic holdover from an agrarian culture, economy. And the truth is, I honestly, if you came to me and said, "Hey, I have this great idea, like the farm workers need more time in the evening to bring in the crops," I'd be like, "Get the fuck up earlier." Like, what? It doesn't. Why make the rest of us change our clocks because you want to like? And who gives a fuck like what time you're bringing in the crops? Just do it when there's light. It doesn't. There's not more light during the day when you do daylight savings.
There's not more light. You're just shifting it. Yeah,
shifting it.
You're not saving any daylight.
Yeah. So just get up at a different time and work until a different time. Like, don't make the rest of us fucking change our clocks.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
And part of my, I've lived here in Arizona for 30 years.
Yeah.
And so like my parents are on the East Coast. And so I'm always like, my mom doesn't like me to call past 9:15. So if I forget.
So now you have to calculate and then it changes.
And I always make a mistake, 2 or 3 mistakes. And then she's like, it's 10:15. Why did you wake me up?
Yeah.
So
no, as a parent, I hate it because waking the kids up, waking myself up is hard enough, when you lose that hour. And then, their routines are, their biological sort of circadian rhythms are disrupted. Right. So
the other thing that's annoying
becomes
for
harder
me,
to wake them up. And I feel bad. Like, they don't fall asleep as early because, they're used to going to bed at a certain hour, so they can't get tired, right? And, but they know they have to get up early.
And this is like a total first world problem, but in iCal, you have to set a time zone.
Oh, yeah.
So if I set Mountain Standard Time as my time zone, then half the time I'm wrong, right? So I have to set.
You don't have you have an Arizona time zone in there?
No. You go in and you set it by city, and I pick Phoenix, which happens to be in Arizona. And but it's very unclear. And also, like the way you set like the calendar up to a time zone, but we stay still and you guys move. And so the time zone should stay the same. Like I feel like the time zone, the Mountain Standard Time and Pacific should have to do with when is the sun above you, directly above you at noon, not like when you arbitrarily made the time. So that's my first world problem. And Marco Rubio and I, we're going to go out to drinks later, and we've become buds over this issue.
Shit. I just read a thing about, I guess like last week, was it? Maybe last week. I think it was last week or early this week. There was Trump had people over at Mar-a-Lago and he polled his guests, Vance or Rubio, who should I support? And they were all Rubio, like apparently in that room. They were big on Rubio.
It's Florida. I mean, he's a senator.
It is Florida, and it is. I think it's like it was.
Go to Cincinnati.
I don't know. We're like in neocons, redux here too. So totally, I think it was like there was a little bit of the neocon representing.
I mean,
faction.
At this point,
and because Rubio is. That's the neocon wing, right? Like
at this point, we should go, if he's in jail, go get him out of jail, but go get him at his apartment, Rick Bolton. Like, get Bolton to come, because he's been his whole life been saying, attack Iran, take out Iran. So like, Lindsey Graham's doing that for him, but holding that water.
It's wild, yeah. All Bolton had to do is just shut up for a little longer, and he would have gotten exactly what he's always wanted. Anyway, yeah.
Really. Anyway, so I did see a funny meme where that said. A culture that invented Pornhub is going up against a culture that invented chess. Who do you think is going to be the better strategist?
That's amazing.
It's pretty funny.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, they have talk about what did Trump used to say about Ukraine? He'd be like, "You don't have any cards," and the Iranians like, "Hold the beer or hold the the mint tea." I have the fucking cards. Like the Strait of Hormuz, I can cause you maximum pain. Shit.
It's bad.
Have you ever seen those? I forget the name of it, but they're like these ancient civilizations. You can watch them in these shows like Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, where they go around the world and just look at, ancient ruins that we don't really know how old they were, like 12,000 years.
Right, like there's that weird, sort of rogue and
I forget his name, Graham something.
That rogue archaeologist guy that
his name is British, Graham something.
Has this whole set of theories that Yeah.
And it's all about the Junger Dryas, and it's actually quite interesting. And there are
It's super interesting, but like when you hear like when you hear the case against his theories, it's like, oh, okay. Because he's really good, that guy.
Yeah, no, he's good.
Like he's a good host, and he he's compelling.
Been doing it for 25 years.
And so like he's easy to believe, but then when you actually hear sort of the detailed case made against like the stuff he's saying, it's like, oh, okay, I get why people don't like that guy. Why like the sort of the conservative or the establishment of archaeology doesn't like that guy, because without going into the depth of it, you sort of have this like, oh, it's like the the smart, progressive, brave rebel versus the establishment, and there's kind of a compelling, like you kind of want to go with Indiana Jones there, right? Like
and he does sort of pull the Joe Rogan, like, hey, I'm not a scientist, but I've been studying this stuff for 25 years.
Right.
He interviews a scientist, they make a statement, and then he goes off by himself and extrapolates a lot of shit off of that statement. So I wonder how many people after they get interviewed are like, what the fuck? Like, that's not, I didn't say there were like an island chain that went from Easter Island to the coast of Peru.
Right.
During, but you're assuming that people walked over, so.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I mean, one thing that I learned on that show is that there is a very elaborate, and you could say sort of Mayan-esque astronomical observatory system of pyramids in Alabama. Like pyramid, over, let's say 1,000 or 2,000 years, people building pyramids that shifted they were looking at one star through the doorway, and they shifted it. They built new pyramids as the star moved. So they're clearly like following the star. And I didn't know that. I just thought that it was all hunter-gatherers in North America. I didn't realize that there was like an established civilization that built pyramids that were like doing astronomy.
Well, I knew there were. I mean, like what they've learned about some of the southwestern settlements is that they were pretty big. But the Southeast, is definitely not a region you hear about as having like city-sized settlements.
Yeah. And then of course, like, when I was growing up, I was a huge fan of Richard Leakey. Olduvai Gorge, and he had his little pith helmet on, and I probably ran around with a pith helmet and tan shorts.
I remember you talking about Leakey, and even when early in our early friendship, like,
Lucy.
I don't think I'd ever met a teenager who mentioned Richard Leakey, but
Really? And I wonder why, because my parents weren't into archaeology at all. Like, I just was like one of the kids nerd out on, like, they memorize the name of dinosaurs. They memorize
There's something about the just the word Olduvai that's such a beautiful, it's such a musical word, right? Like, and then I remember hearing that word in like Johnny Clegg songs and Jaluka songs and
Johnny
stuff, right?
Clegg, I loved him. Olduvai Gorge, and then her name was Lucy, and she's called the missing link because she went from all fours to walking. Like, it's just, there's this, how did humans go from being apes to,
Right.
And it's a fascinating, what I learned not that long ago about Darwin is Darwin would go, when he first set off on the Beagle, HMS Beagle, he was going down Central American coast and then like along, Guyana, all the way down along the eastern edge of South America. And he would stop at various ports and he'd ask, a fixer in the port, hey, can you go ask the farmers if they found any weird big bones in the fields?
Okay.
And then he'd go off and they'd find like, a woolly mammoth skeleton in the farmer's field, and he'd buy it, pack it up in a crate, and then ship it back to England. Like, he did that all the way down the eastern coast. And no one talks about it. It's like not really like a Darwin thing, but that was like one of his favorite hobbies, was to collect dinosaur bones. And he had this system where he'd go and ask farmers, when you were tilling your field, did you ever come across like a giant rib cage sticking out of the earth? And you dug down and found that it was like a huge animal, like bigger than anything you own. And they would be like, a lot of them would be like, yeah, I found this thing and it's over there in the shed.
Oh, wow.
He'd buy them and then send them back to England. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's super interesting.
Darwin. And the one thing I know we're really weaving our ass off this morning, but Darwin.
That's going to be the title of this one.
Weaving our ass off.
That's where I'm stuck on the one I haven't posted yet. Like, I am trying to figure out what to call it. But
I love that we have this resonant kind of natural cadence. Like I'll edit it and put it together, and then you kind of do the.
Do you know the brontosaurus? You heard the brontosaurus doesn't exist, right? Never existed, right?
No, I don't. I didn't know this.
Oh, so that's a whole other interesting. Like, since you're talking about paleontology and stuff, I guess like there were sort of these high profile competing paleontologists. Like during that, there was like a whole sort of surge of digs that happened at one point. Probably, relating to kind of what you just described of Darwin, like there was all this stuff in the ground that nobody had really made a concerted effort to dig up. And so, there were a handful of these paleontologists that were just jetting out to far corners of the earth trying to find dinosaur fossils, right? And and so I guess the brontosaurus was the result of a guy who was just trying to make a name for himself and like competing against the other guys, and like he had basically made it like a composite dinosaur of other big dinosaurs and just named his own species.
So was the brontosaurus the one that was like it was an herbivore that was a giant?
It was a huge herbivore, yeah.
And it had a long neck, and it had
long
like a
neck,
hole,
yeah.
like a whale hole in the top of its head.
I don't think it had a hole in its head, but
okay. Like a breathing tube up here.
Didn't have a breathing tube in its head, but it might have had like a depression or something, because they breathe out of their mouths. Like they're just, like all dinosaurs. But it, apparently like there's the Apatosaurus, and there's the other big ones that I've never heard of, because we grew up in the age of the Brontosaurus.
And he just sort of, he cobbled together like a
he like made a composite and called it a Brontosaurus. And it's like a few other things. They realized that it's a handful of other known species that he cobbled together into a new one. But I was watching some dinosaur thing with my daughter the other day on I don't know, Apple TV or something, and it was it was some huge dinosaur that looked like a brontosaurus, but it was some other thing I'd never heard of. And so there's all these other big ones that look like that, that are different, but brontosaurus, nope, that's not a thing. Apparently.
It makes me think of there was this he's a Sanskrit scholar at Rochester, Douglas Brooks, and I've always admired his lectures. I've been to a bunch of his lectures, but he would say these kind of quippy things, like he'd say, someone would tell him a story like that, and he'd be like, the truth is we got to remember that a thing is true until it's not. Like you're operating under the assumption that there is a brontosaurus your whole life, and then you find out actually some dude it's like Amerigo Vespucci wrote his name really big on the map, and it was meant to be Colombia, and so we just call it America. But like until when you find that out, you're like, oh my God, like we're actually living in Colombia. Yeah, but because of a mistake, we call it America.
I know that guy, man. That guy really. He's got a legacy that's way outsized for his, his actual career.
Maybe he just had too much coffee that day, and he wrote his signature really big, and like they were like, "Wow, that's the name of the map."
we say the John Hancock, and we don't know anything about John Hancock. Like, what the fuck did that guy even do? Except he signed his name really big.
He signed it really big, and there's an insurance company named after him.
Yeah, but other than that, like nobody knows any. Like that guy also has such a legacy.
It's true.
And all he had to do was sign his name really big. So apparently that's a thing you can do. We should figure out the modern day equivalent of signing your name very big.
I knew this guy who was a surgeon, but he did a PhD as part of that, not the WHO, but there's a program you can do where you do an MD, and partway through you finish a PhD, and then you finish your MD, and then the who is it? It's not the FDA, but one of the federal agencies will pay for your whole medical school if you complete it. It's very cool. My daughter wanted to try it, but if you don't complete it, you owe them all the money back. It's kind of a risk. Anyway, he did this cool thing on epidemiology, and he was studying chagas, which is like the Lyme disease of South America, like a little kissing bug, and it causes long-term illness and like heart disease and stuff. Anyway, And I forget what we were talking about. Oh, we were talking about Lyme disease. And he said, before Lyme, Connecticut, I think it was Lyme, Connecticut was the It's named after. But the doctor who sort of identified the spirochete that causes Lyme disease, like the year that happened, which maybe was like 1995, I don't know, some year, right? He goes, prior to that, people were just like, they just had this weird rash and their joints hurt. Like no one knows why, you know? And then, you know, this guy just identified this one spirochete, which by the way, looks like it looks like Alien 2, but tiny, you know, like a little, it's like a water, what are those horses? Those little
seahorse?
Seahorses, but it's like, but a death ray one, you know, like an alien meets an alien had
meets a
sex
seahorse.
with a seahorse. Anyway, so we identify it. Now we say, oh yeah, he has Lyme disease. But there's actually like 7 other pathogens that are in the tick. We just haven't identified that they cause other diseases that we then now lump together as Lyme disease. You know what I mean? So like people are like, hey, I got palsy in my face. And it's like, oh, that's weird because I only got achy joints. Well, it's most likely a different bacteria that's causing that.
in the same pathway
tick,
or whatever.
Using the same tick-borne illness, you know. And anyway, so I guess my point is that, you know, HIV, for instance, like people were dying of this disease and no one knew what it was. And then now we know. So it's kind of like this thing is true or not, or we don't know what it is or mysterious until it's not. But in the world, like in, you know, the sort of flat earth society, it can be lost, the truth. You know, like people during the Middle Ages, you know, Columbus had to make the pitch with the orange to get money to go to, you know. Yeah. Because idiots during the Dark Ages thought that it was flat again, you know? So I guess my point is sort of like a cautionary tale about like, hey, what do we know and could no,
it's not, I mean, it's a real thing because you think about like the anti-science. I just read a book called Against the Machine by a guy named Paul Kingsnorth. And he starts out making this sort of like banger of a case against like modern society and just sort of like where we've arrived and just kind of like, you know, I think we all walk around, or many of us walk around with this sort of vague sense of like this shit, like this society we built is just dystopian in certain ways. Like late stage capitalism is a kind of just dystopia that we've built for ourselves. And it's so weird that we are trapped in this thing that we built, right? And he tries to sort of name what it is. And I think the first third of the book is really compelling. But then he just goes off the rails into this totally anti-science, like, you know, just pinballing from one sort of like conservative trope to another about sort of like what the right way to live is or whatever. Super weird. Anyway, I guess where was I going with that? I think but he has this long diatribe about what science is and what it's done and how harmful science is. And he doesn't distinguish between science and technology, you know, or any of these things. Like, cause you know, the opposite of that is like Mark Andreessen's manifesto, his tech manifesto, where he's talking about how technology is nothing but good. It's done nothing but good for humanity, right? And both those things are false, right? So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think like, you know, I think in some ways people have lost a little bit of a sense of a notion of what science, like the purpose of science, like why science exists at all and why the scientific method exists at all, you know, like I think you're right. We're like, we have a whole swath of the human population that seems to be happy to just sort of discard all of that because somehow it's bad.
It's true.
So it's kind of scary. It's a weird moment of like, there's like a swath of people that seem to want to embrace a dark age.
Yeah. There's,
or they sort of fetishize gut feeling and other things and intuition. And like, these are what we should really rely on, right?
Yeah. It's funny, I was trying to, it's been really fun for me to have my mother-in-law in town and she can't speak English. So I drive her around the city and we speak in Spanish and we talk about like the, you know, news and the topics of the day. And I have to kind of really dig in and ask, like, I need to like, I don't have the vocabulary, right? So I'm learning a lot during these sessions. But yesterday we were talking, for instance, about she was kind of asking me about like the fight between Anthropic and OpenAI and the military about who gets to control. And I was explaining how after 9/11, the Patriot Act, we sort of turned over all of this, our privacy. Like we said, in order to feel safe and have terrorists stopped from committing violent acts in the country, I'll be willing to let you peer into my phone calls and my whatever. Like we let the NSA, we wrote a law, Patriot Act.
Yeah, I mean, it was still supposed to outlaw mass surveillance on American citizens.
It was, but my point was that like there's this constant pull between I'll let you have access.
Freedom versus security are in constant tension with each other. Yeah,
and that this fight has been going on forever. And I was said about like how Orwell wrote this book, 1984, and I was like, had you read the book? And I said, what's funny is, do you remember Abu Ghraib? When like those soldiers were using little digital cameras, it was like before, iPhones and stuff. They were using little digital cameras to record torture that was illegal. And then someone, dumps the files and it got exposed.
Right.
And I remember someone wrote a really interesting essay. They said, George Orwell would be fascinated with the idea that instead of a camera in every room of your home with the government watching everything you do and say, it turned out that there was a camera outside the home recording what was being done. And so you can't get away with anything anymore. Like especially if you're recording everything, because everyone has a camera in their hand, Yeah. It was interesting that he said like it became this, like we almost volunteered to be the big brother with the camera. But then it's like open source so everyone can see it because we post it on the internet. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like a very fascinating twist on what Orwell was expecting, or predicting.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we were talking about this fight between the military and AI. Was it Anthropic?
OpenAI and Anthropic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were saying how this woman Nancy Guthrie, who's been kidnapped, Savannah Guthrie's mom.
Yeah.
And I said, here's an example where she lived in this really high-end neighborhood, and there are 4 big avenues around her, like a square. And the county owned the top avenue and the city owned like the bottom two left corners, right? And each of them had traffic cams installed at some point. And they were paying for the traffic cams, and they were, sending people tickets and I don't know, whatever they were doing. And then for whatever reason, over time, the board of the county board of commissioners or the city council voted to stop paying the subscription. Then they kind of decommissioned the cameras. So then the police were, the FBI was like, hey, we get the footage from those cameras? We saw their cameras. And they're like, actually,
sorry, there's no footage. Yeah.
We decommissioned them. So like we had the cameras, but we didn't see like value in them, and people hated them. So we turned them off. And now we would really love to have that footage, but it's not there.
But that's what, that's what you're talking about, right? Like the tension between safety and freedom, right? Like, do we want that surveillance? Like in England in London they have CCTV, cameras everywhere,
like
right?
Every street, in every.
So like
building.
when you watch like a British crime show, it's like can you pull the footage for that? For that day, for that part of the city, right? And they put together this, this edit of, that's where that car was. Oh, and then it was there, and then it was there, and then it went through this thing, and then it went through that tunnel, and we lost it for a second, but we see it on the other side, right? Like
I remember, when Snowden ended up in Russia and was, he'd give talks. He'd show up and like via Skype or something and give like a talk to some like hacker group or something. And but I was kind of like, I thought the guy was really smart. I thought he had a lot of interesting points to say. And one thing I remember he said was, when you build a system like that, it's fine if the good guys are always in charge. But it's so easy to misuse it. Like, let's say a ne'er-do-well, sort of evil government came into position, and they just were like, okay, let's ruin the lives of, our competition by tracking them to their mistresses' homes. Like they could use it as a weapon. Yeah. And that's kind of, in some ways, what could happen with the Trump administration is they've got access to all of this stuff.
Totally. And that's I think the big fear about the voting, the S.A.V.E. Act is like, it's not so much like, I feel like the narrative is a little bit off what the real fear is. Like, a lot of the narrative is around, well, it's going to disenfranchise people that don't have ID or whatever, right? Like, and then people are like, well, yeah, but what about all the Republicans that don't have passports and blah, 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 right? Well, when you combine a law like that with the power, that say Rubio has as the State Department to like just invalidate people's passports or whatever, right? Like true. That's the kind of thing you're talking about, true. Right? Yeah. Like they could literally, they could just selectively enforce that law. Like if they just said, we're only, we're going to precinct by precinct, and you have Philadelphia, you have, 3 precincts in Philadelphia and 2 in Houston, Texas, that decide to enforce that law, and nowhere else, that would still have a huge impact on the vote. Yeah,
it's true.
Like they can selectively suppress votes by selectively enforcing that law.
I have to make a statement about recently, the FBI last week, they grabbed the voter information from the 2020 election.
Yeah.
So my complaint is, and Donald Trump was asked about it, and he goes, well, because the election was rigged. And
they must think it was rigged. That's why they did it. Yeah.
Right. And so then the reporter said, but your own attorney general said there was not enough fraud to throw the election. I mean, there was like 3 things. So, and they were mostly Trump voters voting for their dead mom. Like if that's what it turned out to be.
Yeah, yeah.
So my complaint there is the thing that sort of rubs me the wrong way to even that this is even back in the news is that, I don't know if you remember, but the cyber ninjas, this idiotic company that was run by like a dude that sold hot dogs or something. Yeah. They came in, we paid them like $3.6 million to go through every single vote. And then I remember the day they presented it with their PowerPoint, they were like, actually Biden won by like 538 more votes.
Yeah.
And Trump was like, fake news. Like I think he said someone got to them and paid them off because, you know what I mean? Like, right. but hold on.
Yeah.
My tax dollars, Arizona tax dollars paid those cyber ninjas.
Yeah.
And they went through every single fucking vote. And when they came up with Trump lost by actually more, he said someone must have got to them.
Oh my God.
Meaning like that someone bribed them, to bring their.
I think this shit is like unforgivable and over the line. Like I had a whole knockdown drag out with my mom and we were finally like, I think we just needed to do it, or I needed to get some shit off my chest because, I see this stuff happening. Like it's horrible. Everything's horrible, right? Yeah, and so there's a part of me every time there's like one more horrible thing drops. I'm like, why did my mom vote for this shit, right? Like, I get why my brothers did.
Yeah.
Why did my mom? Like that feels like such a huge betrayal to me on some level. Yeah. And like I'm over it with my brothers already. Like I already know what they're gonna do. But like when I heard my mom, so I was just like, here's the thing, Mom. Like it's not that I think people who voted for Trump in a blue state like New Mexico are responsible somehow for Trump being elected. Like your vote didn't get Trump elected. Like it's more like the vote is kind of a signal about what a person is willing to accept or tolerate or overlook or rationalize in a person like Trump, right? Like for me, there are so many things that Trump has done in the last 10 years that we've seen that crossed such a line for me that what it tells me is like those things didn't cross that line for you. And so then I wonder like, where is your line? Your line is so different than mine. And that bothers me, right? Like, and the things that you're willing, that you seem like the story that I kind of weave in my head is that you were able to rationalize these things and cast that vote. You were able to rationalize things that I could never rationalize. Like they've crossed such a line for me. I could never imagine rationalizing them back over the line to my side of the line, right? Like it's really just, that's why Trump causes a split in families. It's because he has done so many things that force us all to like articulate where our own line is.
Right. It's interesting.
It was a moderately satisfying conversation in the sense that I was able to articulate to her things, express to her things that I have been ruminating on like endlessly. And I like every time. And now I do feel some relief. Like when the shit is happening, like I at least got it off my chest, you know, and she went back to the same stuff that she did before, which was she was weaving a lot. But, you know, she kept bringing it back to, well, I voted for RFK Jr. And that's this whole other story. Like I could go off on, I think that dude is a fraud and a clown and a dangerous one at that.
Yeah.
And she has this infatuation with him. I didn't even want to go there. Like, I'm like, I wasn't even going to attack that. But, you know, like she would bounce sometimes to other things about like the, you know, the border, the open border. Like, you know, there were certain talking points that just kind of got like she's sort of like embraced on some level or just at least accepted. But I have a problem with like, so then I would dig into that a little bit. I'm like, but you don't know anything about the border and border policy and what Biden's policy is versus Trump. Like you couldn't articulate any differences. There are differences, but you know, I'm saying to my mom, like, I don't think you could articulate or describe any of the differences in their policies. And if you're going to claim that that was an important issue for you, you don't seem to know anything about what Trump's prescription was for that or what was in Project 2025. Like, what did they plan to do to fix that? Like, you claim that. So this is a thing that I just like, one of my hugest pet peeves in dealing with people on any topic is when people have express an opinion about something, especially a strongly held opinion, but then they don't know anything about the thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I sort of feel like you don't have a right to have a strong opinion about something if you can't then make a case about it or just talk about the details of that thing. Like, shut the fuck up. You don't have a right to even have an opinion about it if you don't know enough about it to even formulate a sentence. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it pisses me off. That's like a huge pet peeve of mine.
Isn't that kind of like, let's say it goes back to ancient Greece or the Romans, like that politics is finding a way to say something to convince someone so deeply without any facts, like without any details. Yeah. And that's what like a true, like, you know.
And it drives me nuts that how well that still works in the world.
It works so well.
Like that there's so many people that just don't think about shit. And so, you know, there's a difference for me between somebody like, you know, like the union people you talked about who are voting for Trump maybe, and they're just not thinking about anything. But if you talk to that person and you said, what is your reason? And they were like, you know, the open borders, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever their reason is. Fine. But then if you ask that person, all right, tell me what you don't like about Biden's border policy. They would either not have anything true to say, like factual to say, like they wouldn't know anything.
Right.
Like if you ask that question, or they would just tell you a whole bunch of just bullshit
things they heard on Hannity, you know,
that are not true, right? Or may or may not be that they don't know. They've never checked any of it, right? Yeah. They give you some talking points if they give you anything at all. And then even if you say, well, okay, so what do you think we should do to fix it? They wouldn't have any notion of that, right? Like they would give you nothing. And it's so frustrating. So frustrating when anyway. So I had a little bit of a knockdown drag out with my mom about it, but yeah, anyway.
You know, it's kind of, I was thinking about this morning, back to sort of our Richard Leakey kind of, I just looking way back and thinking in many ways, like you were saying, it's amazing how successful that still is for politicians to like come up with like a quippy talking point is so much more complicated than that. They're oversimplifying it, but that's all the person wants to hear. Like they don't want to hear, if you started spouting 11 facts about the border.
But at the same time, like, they don't want to hear more, but they're not willing to sort of like stop at, well, I guess I don't really know much about that.
Right.
Like they don't want to hear more. They're not interested in more, but they still will profess a really strong opinion and belief about it.
And I think that's
instead of saying I don't want to know more, and guess what? I don't know more. Like those two things don't go hand in hand. They get Dunning-Krugered out of the picture, and people go like, the dumber people are, the more confident they are, right? Like it pisses me.
And I think like one reason that Rupert Murdoch became so successful with his Fox News sort of MAGA supportive approach was that he found that to be the weak point, that there's a group of his, I guess, customers or viewers or audience that they want it to be simple. They want to hear what they want to hear.
They want certainty.
They want certainty.
Yeah.
And then they want you to confirm, like, for instance, we've said that one of the things Donald Trump does really well is if you are racist, it was always in the last 35 years, it was always kind of considered, hush, hush, like you could get in trouble for being found out for being racist.
If you said it out loud, you said it in very coded ways.
Yep. It was politically incorrect. You could be fired for being found out.
But there were a lot of like coded ways people would say that stuff.
But no one would be overt.
Nobody would just say it out loud in its plain nakedness. Yeah.
So this dude would, and people were like, what a relief.
Yeah,
now
they felt seen.
They felt seen, and they felt like he gave them permission to say it out loud.
It's that thing like that minorities feel, like representation matters. They felt seen, and they're like, seen. Cool. I get to see this guy on TV who is me.
Yeah, he believes what I believe. He says things that
it's
I
like
wish
the weird
I could have.
perversion. It's a weird perversion of like, like a Filipino going like, cool, there's a Filipino on The Voice, right? Like, I feel represented. Yeah. It's like the perversion of that. It's the same. It's the same exact thing.
I think
for like white racist people.
Yeah, I think one of the things when I listened to Talarico talk, and to me, he's like coming from these border, white people from the border who had been there for generations. Yeah, and they were. And he one of the things he says is like, my ancestors have been collaborating cross-border with laborers from Mexico for centuries, actually, for like 100, more than 100 years. Yeah. And he goes, like, we know how to do that. Like, we know they come over, they work, they pay them, and they go back, like we just have figured it out. We don't need you to tell us like, no, you can't do that anymore. Like, you know what I mean? And so there's people, I think, in like people who are red Republican voters who are like, that's true. Like, and then he says, are you sick of feeling divided? And there's people who are. I think there's plenty of people who are like, I actually am sick of it.
He's doing that in a like, because I think Biden did that, and that was part of Biden's success in some way. It was like sort of, are you sick of this divider that we've had for 4 years? Yeah. And are you sick of the chaos? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
you're sick of the chaos.
Now, Talarico adds a spin on that, which is like the division is unchristian.
Right. And it comes from the oligarchs.
So he has a way of speaking to Christians as a Christian that is refreshing, where it's like, oh, wait, here's a Christian who actually acts like a Christian. Yeah. And there's an interesting thing that kind of like, so I followed like the atheist discourse for quite a while, right? Like when like the Sam Harrises of the world and Richard Dawkinses were out debating like, Christian pastors and stuff. And I watched some of that way back then, and 10 years ago, whenever that was. And I think a lot of that sort of flamed out for good reason. But there were interesting conversations that spun out of that. But one of the things that I see in like Christian versus atheist discourse is a question that Christians often ask atheists is like, if you're an atheist, like, how do you decide? Like, how do you decide what's good? Like, they have this idea that atheists must be nihilists. Like, atheists and nihilists must be the same thing, and so that you can't have, like, if there isn't a God and a scripture telling you what's good and what's not, what's right and wrong. Like, how do you even know? How do you decide what's right and wrong? You must just be selfish, like, because what else do you have, right? And what's funny with James Talarico is like I'll look at the comment threads of his clips that are out there, right? Like he was just on Ezra Klein, and I saw a few clips from that. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but in the comments, there's always a bunch of atheists saying, "Hey, I'm an atheist, but this is the kind of Christian I could endorse," or whatever, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Like
exactly.
that's a theme. Way. That's a theme that pops up in the comments under his stuff a lot, and it's super interesting to me because I started really thinking about like, well, what is it? Like, how do you answer that question of a Christian? Like, what is the thing that an atheist can point to that says, this is how I decide what's right and wrong? And I think the answer is like some kind of consequentialism, right? Like, we have a sense of the society we want to live in, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to live in a society where everyone behaves super selfishly, right? And so I think it's just that. It's just like, well, if I don't want that kind of society, then I can't behave like that, right? Like, I need to be part of the society that I want.
Yeah.
And so it's that consequentialism. And I think one of the interesting examples of like consequentialists will say, well, like for the greater good of humanity, like what if, for example, this is one of these thought experiments that consequentialists use, like a doctor who has a patient and, a perfectly healthy patient comes in with a head cold or something. And the doctor goes, well, I could harvest this guy's organs and I could save 10 people by just killing this one guy, right? Like, why shouldn't
tell him he has a terminal illness and he has to operate? And
so like, people who argue against consequentialism will say, what about that? Like, that's consequentialism in its purest form. And you say, well, it's not really, because nobody would want to live in a society where you would go to the doctor with a head cold and there's a possibility you would just get your organs harvested, right? Like, like if you look at the whole picture of consequentialism and the society that that would reflect, like, obviously that wouldn't be a consequence that we would accept. Right.
Certainly would be a boost for the homeopathy people and the Chinese medicine.
Right. So I mean, that's, to me, that's the sort of the secular morality comes from that, I think. Because Christians always wonder, like, where does secular morality come from?
And I think a really interesting parallel that Talarico is drawing to that inquiry is this idea that that we're following a barefooted rabbi who did support and treat the poor and like serve like the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
And if we really believe that we're Christians, we should welcome an immigrant who is an asylum seeker and help them and feed them and clothe them.
Yeah.
And that if we're not doing that, we're not real Christians, Well,
but at the same time, he acknowledges how hard that is, which I think is another thing that really resonates with people, because he's like, accepting, like, loving your enemy is the hardest thing. It's almost impossible to be the kind of person who can love your enemy. Wow. And that's what Jesus is challenging us to do. And that's sort of, I'm just sort of paraphrasing Talarico, right? And I think that in itself is such a powerful thing for him to acknowledge. Like, the people who, because we want to take the easy way, right? Like, he's acknowledging that, like, I'm asking you to do, and Jesus asked you to do the hard thing. And we've all been avoiding the hard thing. Yeah. And we have lots of like pastors out there and politicians out there that are encouraging us to do the easy thing, which is to hate each other, right? Like, but like, do the hard thing. And then it is fucking hard, which I think that's really powerful part of his message.
I mean, I remember my daughter and I, when she was in high school, we used to go on these little deep dives, and we started following or reading the essays of this Israeli biologist. I'm going to look his name up and put it in the notes, but he was studying altruism. Yeah, he's a biologist, and he had found these Israeli doves. Okay, that basically their society, their little species, were hyper altruistic. Like, it was kind of like, like a little communist utopia where someone was sick or hurt or couldn't go out and find food. They would bring that bird food. If the bird hurt their leg, And he said he was fascinated with this tension between competing with your neighbor for more resources and seeing the whole, like, hyper collaborating so that the tribe prospers,
It's the most fascinating thing.
It is, right? Like, because there's a constant tension between,
it's that, like the tragedy of the commons, right? Like,
right, it is tragedy of the commons.
Yeah, I mean, that's what that is. That's the most fascinating thing. I think it's one of the most absolutely fascinating things that because it's what we just said. Like, I think that most people, I think this is the human dilemma. Most people, I think, are consequentialists on some level. Like, even if you're not a believer, like, I think even most Christians aren't doing good in the world out of this fear of hell.
Right.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
I know. I think it's
like, I don't think
my experience with people.
Like, I don't think that's the thing that is driving people to be kind and good and generous and, generally have integrity and all that. Right. Like, I think we have an inner motivation to just be that way for the most part.
Yeah.
And to preserve the commons and to have a society. Because on some level, I think we just understand in our DNA that, like, being connected to each other and cooperating, collaborating, and that's the world we want to live in. Mm-hmm. And then there's a handful of people who just fucking suck. Right? And that small minority of people cause such problems. Yeah. I think it is the small minority of people, and they're powerful as fuck because that's what they're interested in. Right. A lot of those people. And so that's the person who fucks up the commons. So you got a bunch of farmers with their herds, and they understand that we need to preserve the commons. So we're all going to graze a reasonable amount so that we can keep going. Yeah. And then that one fucker comes along that's just like, there's no rules. Fuck, man. Like, I'll put more cows out there for longer. Nobody, you know what I mean? Like, just that guy's the problem.
My dad was a PhD candidate in history. We went to live in Holland, and he was studying the Dutch East India Company. Mm-hmm. And he was going through, he taught himself Old Dutch, and he was reading the minutes of their meetings. Mm-hmm. It's like they would write it down. A lot of them were burned by Napoleon, but he was looking for this moment, this pivotal moment where globalization began and people started saying, we would never do this in Holland, in Amsterdam or Den Haag, but it's okay to do it in the colony because there's no rules. It's sort of like, it's Heart of Darkness with the rivets. Like as you go up the river, there's less and less rules and there's no repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, in that book, Hayek's Bastards, they were citing sort of the English sort of aristocracy during the early colonial era that were kind of having that same series of thoughts, because they were trying to make, these guys in Hayek's Bastards were trying to make the case against immigration, right? And again, and for closing borders to people, but not to money and goods, right? Yeah. And again, that one guy's quote, Herman Hoppe, I think his name was, who said, there's a reason why the Japanese have factories in the Philippines instead of having Filipinos in Japan, right? Like, like it was that spirit, it was that sentiment that they were looking for in sort of in English history and philosophy and political philosophy, because they wanted to make their case for closing borders, and they wanted an intellectual sort of backing or intellectual sort of heft to their case. Right. And it was looking at stuff like that, like these people in England back in the day, just sort of rhapsodizing about how wonderful life was because they could get anything from anywhere in the world without bringing the people to them. Right. So they were so happy in their privileged lives that they could just benefit from all the citrus fruits and whatever that were produced everywhere, but they didn't have to deal with the people in those places. They could just subjugate them to their will, and it was just so sinister to read ways, like the sort of the rhapsodizing of those people about that. And I'm sure it's what your dad maybe encountered to some extent too in those meetings.
I mean, it makes me think of two things. First is, like, I think of do you remember the Bhopal massacre in India, where like the leak of gas at this chemical plant killed 500 people or something. Mm-hmm. And I often say, like, there's a reason that the Bhopal massacre didn't happen in South London. Yeah. Or Paris or New York, it's because there are laws against making chemicals and putting them next to a village. Like, there's laws against that because it's dangerous. And so we put it in fucking Bhopal because there wasn't a law.
For sure. There's a guy I follow on TikTok. He's hilarious who he does one of his little genres is these sort of corporate HR meetings, like, and so that he has a meeting, like he plays both parts of the conversation, but he's like, in a meeting with HR, and the HR guy is like, Ron, do you know what a fun fact is? He's like, yeah. He's like, I mean, do you know why we're talking about this? He said, yeah, like a fun fact, like the Bhopal disaster was 100 times more deadly than Chernobyl, but we never talk about it. He's like, okay. we start our meetings with fun facts, and that is a fact, but it's not fun.
That's awesome.
So,
wow. I mean, we're laughing,
anyway,
but not because the Bhopal massacre. It was a
for
tragic
sure,
thing.
Exactly.
We're laughing at the ludicrous quality of
how we process stuff like that as in our privileged world. But yeah, it's anyway.
My second thought is that perhaps, and in this sort of very big picture way, perhaps that's how we thought that the melting pot quality of America would counteract that colonial impulse, first to manifest destiny, to take out all the land from the Native indigenous Americans, and then to sort of recolonize the world with our army after World War II through globalization. Yeah, we misunderstood that, like, that impulse is like literally what's running, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. Like that's they're acting just like colonial era people.
Yeah, and again, it's like, I think it's a small number of people that that like are really driven to create that selfish society to benefit themselves, and the rest of us aren't. Most of us aren't like that. The vast majority of us aren't like that. Yeah, but it's hard to. It's like we are not wired to fight that off, to like defend against that, because number one, we don't encounter many people like that in our daily lives that are just like dog eat dog, social Darwinist, zero sum, strivers. We just don't. We don't encounter those people in daily life. And if you do, you just say, fuck that guy's an asshole. And you just, you don't talk to that person again. You're like, we're not inviting that guy to the party again, right? Meanwhile, that guy becomes your mayor. Right. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's just it's a small. Anyway, I was thinking about, like what you said, we're not laughing about the Bhopal massacre or the Bhopal disaster. It's like, there's a comedian named Anthony Jeselnik whose comedy I don't love. Like I like him on and off. Like sometimes he's really funny, but his comedy can be kind of offensive and it's dark humor, a lot of it. And he gets asked one of the questions, like, as these comedians have responded against like wokeness and stuff, like there's sort of like a school of comedians who just rejected wokeness and then kind of embrace like a little bit of right-wing comedy and stuff. And like that guy in the Madison Square Garden who was dissing Puerto Rico, like, like there's trash heap and there's these guys, Tony Hinchcliffe. Yeah. There's a sort of comedians who were like, nobody can take a joke anymore, right? Like people can't take a joke, and complaining about like the wokeness of the world and how their comedy is dying because of wokeness or whatever. And so Anthony Jeselnik gets asked about that a lot because his comedy can be sort of twisted and offensive. And he's like, those fucker people, all they just can't write good jokes. Like they're being lazy, and they wish they could have their stupid jokes get laughs. And so they're trying to find audiences that will laugh at their dumb jokes. He says, you can be offensive. You just have to be funnier than you are offensive.
Interesting, huh?
And I think that's such a really simple articulation of the formula. And one of the ways you can be funnier than you are offensive is by earning trust over time, right? Like this guy I talked about who was making the joke about, fun facts. Like if you watch the body of his work, you kind of get a sense of like who he is, and you see what a compassionate guy he is, and what sort of he's got integrity and heart and compassion. And you sort of learn that about his body through his body of work. And then he's earned the ability to make a joke like that because you know exactly what he's making fun of. Right. Like, you know that it's still sort of like a borderline joke that he's making, but you know the point of it, you know where it's coming from, and you know what the message of that joke is. Or like the Onion can put a headline out about 9/11 because they've earned it.
Right.
They've earned that. Whereas Babylon Bee could put out the same headline and you'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's really like off. It's too soon. Or
Yeah.
This is at the risk of falling down like a rabbit hole but quoting a Woody Allen film.
Yeah.
Alan Alda's character in one of the Woody Allen films is trying to describe comedy, and he says, if it's easy. If it bends, it's funny. If it breaks, it's not funny. And it's like exactly what you're saying. Like that like sort of encapsulates.
Yeah.
Because it can bend really far.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but if it breaks, you've entered into the zone of not funny.
And by bringing up Woody Allen, you've like put a meta level on that, because I was like, and we've talked about this before. I was talking to Lonnie my wife about the sort of like, why are some comedians or some artists canceled and others aren't, right? Like, we were talking about Elvis. She was like, he married a 14-year-old. Like, why do we revere Elvis? Like he was basically, Elvis was such a bad dude, basically, right? Like, I'm like, but you could say the same thing about Michael Jackson. Like, why is Michael Jackson not canceled, right? And versus like, P. Diddy or something, or like, who's, you know what I mean? Like, or back in the day, Jerry Lee Lewis was basically doing the same stuff as Elvis and was really like blacklisted, like thrown out of polite society, right?
Yeah, he married his cousin or something.
And you go like, why did Jerry Lee Lewis get canceled effectively, but Elvis is still revered? And there's it's that equation, it's that formula. You have like the sort of the cultural value of their work on one side of the equation, sort of the awfulness of them on the other side of the equation, and the stuff they did. And like, you're weighing those two things, and you're like, somehow Michael Jackson still comes out on top. It's like, oh, that's some bad stuff, but holy shit, like, look what he made, right? And that's why I think, I think we all do that on some level. Maybe we don't all come out with the same we don't all weigh those same things the same way, but it's like, what's the guy's name? Who's the other dude who was like, the R&B guy. Anyway, so
Chris Brown or no?
No, I don't remember. I can't think of his name. But there's like certain people that they're just like, you know what? The stuff he produced wasn't like Jerry Lee Lewis. It just wasn't. It's not good enough to counterbalance that stuff. But Elvis somehow was. I don't know. Like
I've never forgotten. We were in E.B. Glenn's class with the affectional ordering of experience that he wrote. And he was telling us a story about Wagner, how Wagner had like a bunch of mistresses and children out of wedlock. And some, minister at some ministers' meeting got up and said, we're going to cancel Wagner. Like Wagner is terrible. No one should listen to Wagner.
Right.
And then they got up and they sang a hymn. And E.B. Glenn was like, should I tell them? Like, should I tell them that melody is Wagner wrote that hymn? Because they love it and it works great in church.
Yeah.
So like, can we separate the
that's
artist
exactly
from the art?
It, right? Like, and I think we are all, on some level, we're all separating the artist from the art and weighing them.
All the time.
Weighing them against each other. So like somehow Wagner, it's like, like he was bad, but like, look what he made, right? Like he comes out on top. Or Thomas Jefferson, it's not always art, right? It's like, you look at somebody like that and you go, well, Thomas Jefferson, Declaration of Independence, like.
And if you watch.
It's a pretty big one.
If you watch the Ken Burns Revolutionary War, for me, it just kind of, there were like 15 things I didn't know that put everyone in a different light, like King George comes out as actually not the villain. And like George Washington sent his brokers, his land brokers, into the Ohio Valley where to like steal land from the Native Americans so that he could sell it to farmers. And King George had made a rule like you can't go past the Appalachian Mountains.
That was one of the big things that started the war, right? It was the westward expansion. The British rule against westward expansion might have been the biggest thing, right?
We're going to protect the Native Americans west of the Appalachians and let that be their land, and no one should go west. And the colonists were like, "Fuck you!" And that, So like under that perspective, you're like, "Wow, King George actually had a lot of compassion and saw the big picture for everyone involved." And then these colonists were just
and all
like, fuck that.
to weave it way back, like this is all stuff that makes things that people who crave simplicity and closure, cognitive closure, like, and certainty, they hate all this stuff.
Right.
Because it's complexity, it's ambiguous. You have no choice but to sort of like, the only conclusion you can really reach with any integrity and honesty is it's complicated.
Right. And it's, everything is gray, not
everything is gray.
Of gray, not black and white. It's
and there's a lot of people who just can't handle anything gray.
Right. I love your analogy of the Elvis, because it's true that if he's got 15 songs that you tap your foot along to, that overcomes the fact that he married a teenager.
Yeah, and the movies, and like you add it all up, and you go like,
add it all up. He was really handsome, and Jerry Lewis wasn't that handsome. Like there's he was
and Michael Jackson is actually, I think, fairly close to the line. Like it's not overwhelming, right? Because like there's a musical out, a Broadway musical, like MJ the Musical, right? And I do hear like plenty of chatter. It's like, I don't know if we should have a musical. You know what I mean? Like. Right. Like we should let's not think about Michael Jackson too much. Like, let's not open that Pandora's box. It was just kind of, he's not canceled yet, but like the more we think about it, like, let's just avoid that one. So I think Michael Jackson is one of those ones he nets out a little bit close to balance, and it's uncomfortable for people.
I think he came to adulthood with this massive library of songs that people just adored. When when he was a child star in the Jackson 5, and this little kid, and you're just like, oh,
he was just a genius talent,
such a genius talent.
He was just like an unbelievable talent. And what about like Bill Cosby's one that fascinates me because he another one who just produced so much amazing stuff.
Yeah,
but then what he was accused of is so creepy.
Well, I think that what makes that worse, by the way, full disclosure, I used to go to an allergist in Jenkintown outside of Philadelphia, and I would sit in the waiting room, and I would sit next to his wife. What's her name? Cosby. I mean, they lived in Philadelphia, but she went to the same allergist, and I would talk to her. I've talked to her like 15 times. Their son played against ANC. So anyway, but I think what broke the hearts of many is that he was Dr. Huxtable. Like
and even his comedy was so about parenting and childhood, and like it was his stand-up comedy was so wholesome. Yeah, so I think there's something about the wholesomeness of his professional career that like extra. It's sort of like this is a weird analogy, but like when you hear about somebody who dies like at an amusement park or something like that, or like dies at doing something fun. Yeah. And in some unexpected way, like it's extra horrifying. Somehow the contrast between like where and how, the context of their death, and it adds extra. And I think that's what it is with Bill Cosby. It's like his professional work was so wholesome and light, and then what he did was so twisted and gross and creepy. Yeah. Yeah. And then there's people who are, anyways, go ahead. Yeah. What were you going to say?
No. Well, no, Bill Cosby's an interesting one because, like, isn't he out of jail? I feel like
there was some, I don't, and this is why, like, we may be being a little unfair. I don't know. There was some reason why he was acquitted, and I don't think it was totally just a technicality, or I don't know. Like
the person's story that he was convicted by one story.
I don't know.
And like a whole bunch of women claimed this, but they only used one case to convict him. In that case, the woman had said to someone like, I can't wait to get all the money, or something like that. Like there was something, I think there was something they found out later. Well, let's look it up actually.
We should probably look it up. And I mean, but he's an interesting one to me because I really loved his work when I was young. I loved his stand-up.
We had his albums.
I loved his albums, and the Fat Albert Show. I used to watch that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the Fat Albert stuff. Show.
Yeah.
Dang.
So
and then the Cosby Show, I watched it religiously.
Yeah, but I think that again, like that might even add to the pain and the sort of the disgust that we like that somehow works into the equation against him.
I'm not going to say his name, but were you roommates with?
R. Kelly was the guy I was thinking of before.
R. Kelly,
he's one who was just like his work is just not even close to overcoming He's like the Jerry Lee Lewis. Like, it's like, just sorry, dude. Like, what you made, like, we can do without that as a culture. Like, I can't even name one of your songs anymore.
I remember the first time, because I went through a weird sort of like march through the desert when my kids were little, where I just didn't, like, I wasn't part of popular culture.
Yeah.
And so like R. Kelly popped up maybe 15 years ago, and there was some terrible trial that he was acquitted of, raping his cousin or something. And when she was underage. And there was a video. He made like a video of it. And then like in the trial, they were like, it might not be his face. Like it's a little bit blurry. And so the jury was like, there's a tiny seed of doubt. This was before he was finally convicted. Yeah. But I remember like going to listen to his song on Apple Music to see if like people were like, he's an amazing musician. And I was like, the guy has pipes. Yeah. But I can't get the image out of my mind of what he did, so I can't listen to it. He does.
Well, I mean, and the fact that you had to go search out his song. Yeah, right.
No, I hadn't heard it. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, so I mean, like, he was not a major guy, right? Like, he was medium. He was mid.
He did have. When I say pipes, he could fucking sing.
Sure,
like, you know what I mean.
But lots of people can fucking sing.
Yeah, lots of people
like we can lose that guy, right? Like, the culture has no problem discarding R. Kelly, right? But we can't. The culture has a big problem discarding Michael Jackson. There's an ocean of difference between Michael Jackson and R. Kelly on that side of the equation.
There was
now
this guy,
on the other side of the equation, like I think Michael Jackson is like I think we've chosen to just not think about it too much because it's pretty bad.
Yeah, no, it's true. There was a guy who. So remember that show Rent? Yeah. The musical Rent. 525,000.
Jonathan Larson,
Yeah, and I used to go to
Diner.
the Moondance Cafe, and he was there, and Anyway, there was a guy who lived down on Chambers Street with some of our friends from NYU. He was a roommate, and he was an actor, singer. He'd been on some soap operas. I think he's been on Law and Order. Jesse Martin. Yeah, Jesse Martin.
Jesse Watkins back then, right? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he changed his name. Anyway, so he was one of the original cast members of Rent. And then they made an album and they invited Stevie Wonder to sing along. So like it was like this album, but Stevie Wonder sang all the songs and then they sort of like did a chorus behind him, Okay. And I said, how'd you feel about that? And he's like, he's Stevie Wonder. Like, what am I going to do?
Like, how are you going to, yeah.
And then they did a national, international tour. Yeah. And I said, hey, how come you're not going on the tour? And he goes, Milo, when a show blows up like this, I mean, when I auditioned, there was like, I don't know, 15 of us. Yeah. And I got the part. And he goes, for this national show, 5,000 people came to audition for my part. And there are like 2,000 people that can sing way better than me. But they can't, you know what I mean? Like you said, we can lose that guy. It's like, we can lose that guy because there's 2,000 more R. Kellys where,
Yeah. That's funny.
It is pretty funny.
I guess we should probably wrap it up because we're over an hour, but over an hour and 15, I think. Good. Yeah.
We weaved our asses off.
We weaved our asses off. That'll be the title of this one. Yeah.
I would like to propose that it somehow was about when we landed on the that line for the common good, or it was like the tension between
security
competition. Between competition and altruism.
Like,
that to me,
the tragedy of the commons, all that.
Tragedy of the commons.
If there was a core to this one, it was that.
Tragedy of the commons. Yeah, that's where the inquiry was going. And
the commons.
Always was the commons.
Yeah.
Anyway, always a pleasure to, I almost said always a pleasure to do business with you. I guess always a pleasure to be on the pod with you. Satellite Haiku.
All right, Milo. See you, brother.
See ya.
Satellites? A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.